Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien faces around the giant table. Her hand stayed calm on the smooth surface, but inside her chest, anger burned like a small fire. For 3 long years, she had come to this place. For 3 years, she had spoken for all humans in the galaxy. And for 3 years, these aliens had treated her people like children who knew nothing. The council chamber was huge. The ceiling went up so high that Elena could barely see the top. Lights floated in the air without any wires or cables. The table was made of some kind of blue stone that seemed to glow from inside. Around the table sat beings from 47 different worlds. Some looked almost human, but with strange colors or extra arms. Others were so different that Elena still felt surprised when she saw them move. The Zilithians sat across from her. They were tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected the floating lights. Their leader, Prime Minister Kethvar, had been talking for 20 minutes. His voice was smooth and cold, like water running over ice. He was explaining why humans could not be trusted with the new hyperspace routes that human explorers had found just last month. The human species shows too much emotion, Kethvar said. His large black eyes looked at Elena like she was some kind of bug. They make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. We cannot allow such an unstable race to control important trade routes through the galaxy. Elena felt the fire in her chest grow hotter. The hyperspace routes were found by human ships. Human crews had died mapping those dangerous paths through folded space. 3 ships had been lost. 15 good people had never come home. And now these aliens wanted to take away what humans had bought with their blood. She looked around the table at the other delegates. The Vorlak ambassador nodded his huge head in agreement. His people looked like walking trees with too many eyes. The tiny micro-collective spoke in their buzzing voice about how humans were too aggressive for peaceful trade management. Even the Andromedans, who were more like machines than living beings, said nothing to support humanity. Elena had heard all of this before. Every time humans found something new, every time they solved a problem or made a discovery, the Council found reasons why humans could not be trusted with it. When human scientists had created a new type of shield that could stop most energy weapons, the Council said it was too dangerous for widespread use. When human diplomats had ended a war between 2 alien races, the Council said humans were interfering in matters they did not understand. The worst part was that Elena knew why they really hated humans. It was not because humans were emotional or aggressive. It was because humans were good at things that scared the other races. Humans learned fast. They adapted to new situations better than most aliens. They found solutions that others missed, and they did not give up when things got hard. Furthermore, Kethvar continued, we have reports that human military forces are building new weapons without Council approval. This shows their warlike nature. The hyperspace routes should be managed by the Zilithian Trade Federation, which has 3,000 years of experience in such matters. Elena almost laughed. The Zilithians had experience in taking things from other races and calling it trade management. They had been doing it since before humans had even left Earth. But when Elena had pointed this out in previous meetings, the Council had said she was being unnecessarily hostile. She raised her hand to speak. The floating lights dimmed a little, which meant the translation system was getting ready to carry her words to all the different languages around the table. Prime Minister Kethvar, Elena said, keeping her voice steady. You speak of human emotion, but you seem to forget that it was human emotion that drove us to map those routes in the first place. Curiosity, determination, and yes, even anger, at being told we could not do something. These emotions led to discoveries that benefit everyone in this galaxy. Kethvar's silver skin seemed to get brighter, which Elena had learned meant he was annoyed. This only proves my point, Ambassador. Humans act on impulse rather than careful planning. And what about the Vorthon situation? Elena asked. The chamber became very quiet. She had brought up the Vorthons many times before, and the council always acted like she was talking about imaginary monsters. "There is no Vorthon situation," said the Vorlak ambassador in his deep, rumbling voice. "Your people see threats where none exist. This is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we worry about." Elena felt her calm control start to crack. For 2 years, human scouts had been sending reports about strange ships at the edge of the galaxy. Ships that moved too fast and used weapons that cut through any known shield. Ships that belonged to something called the Vorthon Empire. Every time Elena brought evidence to the council, they dismissed it as human fear or lies. "Our scouts have given you sensor data, ship fragments, and communication intercepts," Elena said. "How much proof do you need?" "Proof from reliable sources," Kethvar said with a smile that showed too many sharp teeth. "Not from a species that sees enemies behind every star." That was the moment when something inside Elena broke. She had been patient for 3 years. She had been polite when aliens insulted her people. She had followed every rule and tradition of the council, even when those rules seemed designed to keep humans in their place. She had believed that eventually the other races would see that humans deserved respect, but they would never see it. No matter what humans did, no matter how much they helped or how many problems they solved, the aliens would always see them as dangerous children who needed to be controlled. Elena stood up slowly. The chamber became completely silent. In 3 years, no human delegate had ever left their seat during a session. "You want to know about human emotion?" Elena said. Her voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. "Here is some human emotion for you. We are tired of being treated like we do not matter. We are tired of our discoveries being stolen and our warnings being ignored. We are tired of being the only race in this council that actually cares about protecting innocent people." She walked around the table, her boots making loud sounds on the crystal floor. Every alien eye followed her movement. "For 3 years, we have tried to work with you. We have shared our knowledge, our resources, and our protection. We have asked for nothing except to be treated as equals. Instead, you treat us like pets that sometimes do clever tricks." Elena stopped in front of the main council podium. She reached into her jacket and pulled out her translation device, her council identification badge, and a sealed data pad. "This is our formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Council," she said, placing the items on the podium. "Effective. Immediately, humanity will no longer participate in council activities. We will no longer share our discoveries or provide protection for council worlds. We will no longer trade with council members or allow council ships in human space." The aliens started talking all at once. Some sounded angry, some sounded confused, and a few sounded worried. But Elena was not listening anymore. She turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Behind her, the other human delegates stood up and followed. They moved together like they had practiced it, though they had never talked about this moment. They all knew it would come eventually. As Elena reached the doors, she heard Kethvar call out behind her. "You cannot do this. No race has ever left." "The council!" Elena stopped and looked back at the table full of aliens. Some were standing now, their faces showing emotions that their species rarely displayed in public. "You are right," Elena said. "No race has ever left the council before. But then no race like humanity has ever been in the council before either." The doors closed behind the human delegation with a sound like thunder. In the chamber, 46 alien races sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what had just happened. None of them understood yet that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the council chamber. At first, most of the alien delegates felt relieved. The chamber seemed more peaceful without the humans asking difficult questions or bringing up uncomfortable topics. The Zilithians had thrown a celebration party, calling it Liberation Day, freedom from human interference in galactic affairs. But now, as Prime Minister Kethvar looked at the reports on his desk, he was beginning to feel something he had not experienced in centuries: worry. The first sign that something was wrong came from the trade stations. Human cargo ships had always been a common sight at alien ports. They carried everything from rare metals to food supplies to manufactured goods. Human traders were known for being fair and reliable, even if the council members would never admit it publicly. 3 months ago, all human ships had simply stopped coming. Kethvar read through the report from Trade Station Gamma 7, one of the busiest ports in Zilithian space. The station manager, a nervous micro-collective named Buzz Click Hum, had sent increasingly worried messages as the weeks went by. Day 1 after human withdrawal. No human ships today. This is unusual, but not concerning. Day 7. Still no human vessels. Some supply shortages beginning to appear, requesting permission to contact alternative suppliers. Day 30. Critical shortages of medical supplies and food preservatives. Alternative suppliers cannot match human quality or delivery speed. Station morale dropping. Day 90. We are down to emergency rations. Without human medical supplies, we have lost 14 beings to diseases that were easily treatable before. Please advise. The same pattern was happening everywhere. Human ships had been so common that other races had stopped producing many basic goods. Why make something yourself when humans could make it better and cheaper? Now, with the humans gone, entire sectors were running out of essential supplies, but the missing trade ships were just the beginning. Commander Thek 9 of the Andromedan Collective was reviewing battle reports from the Outer Rim conflicts. The Andromedans were artificial beings created by a long-dead race to serve as peacekeepers. They prided themselves on logical thinking and emotional detachment. But even Thek 9 felt something resembling concern as she processed the data. Before the human withdrawal, there had been 3 active conflicts in the galaxy. Small wars, nothing too serious, but they needed to be managed to prevent them from spreading. The humans had always provided peacekeeping forces for these situations. Their soldiers were surprisingly good at stopping fights without making them worse. Now, without human peacekeepers, all 3 conflicts had exploded into major wars. The Rigel system's civil war had spread to 4 neighboring star systems. The trade dispute between the Antarian League and the Corvus Federation had turned into open warfare, with both sides using planet-killer weapons. Worst of all, the border skirmish between the Helix Alliance and the Omega Confederacy had become a full invasion, with millions of refugees fleeing their homes. Thek 9 sent a message to the human embassy on New Geneva, requesting immediate assistance. The message came back marked, "Address unknown, no such recipient." She tried again with a different human colony. Same result. For the first time in her 300-year existence, Thek 9 felt something that might have been fear. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Veltar of the Vorlak Research Institute was staring at sensor readings that made no sense. The Vorlak were plant-like beings who had been studying space for over 10,000 years. They were experts at detecting energy signatures and tracking ship movements across the galaxy. But they could not figure out what the humans were doing. 3 months ago, human space had become very quiet. All communication signals stopped. All trade ships disappeared. It was like humanity had simply turned off all their technology and gone to sleep. But the sensor readings told a different story. Deep in human territory, something was happening. The readings showed massive energy expenditures, far greater than anything the humans had ever produced before. Construction signatures indicated that humans were building something huge, but the sensors could not penetrate whatever was blocking their signals to get clear pictures. Dr. Veltar had been tracking human ship movements for years as part of her research. She knew that humans typically moved in small groups, usually single ships or small fleets. Their energy signatures were distinctive but relatively weak compared to other spacefaring races. Now, the energy signatures coming from Human space were unlike anything in the database. They were massive, complex, and completely alien. Some of the readings suggested that humans were somehow moving entire fleets instantly across vast distances, using a technology that the Vorlak had never seen before. Even more disturbing were the reports from the edge of human space. Long-range scouts from various races had tried to investigate, but they found something impossible. The borders of human territory seemed to be surrounded by some kind of interference field that blocked all sensors and communications. Ships that tried to cross the border simply disappeared from all tracking systems. 2 Zilithian reconnaissance vessels had vanished while trying to investigate. A Vorlak deep space probe had lost contact the moment it entered the interference zone. Even the advanced Andromedan surveillance drones could not penetrate whatever the humans had created around their space. The only clues came from refugees and independent traders who had been caught outside human space when the withdrawal happened. They told strange stories about seeing human ships that looked completely different from anything humanity had built before. Ships that were larger, sleeker, and seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. Some refugees claimed they had seen human fleets moving with escort vessels that did not match any known ship design in the Galactic database. The escorts were described as beautiful and terrifying at the same time, with hulls that seemed to be made of living crystal and weapons that made space itself appear to twist and fold. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the Galactic edge far beyond normal space travel routes. Independent explorers reported encountering human ships in areas that should have been impossible to reach with known technology. These ships did not respond to communication attempts and disappeared immediately when approached. Back in the council chamber, the mood had changed dramatically from the celebration 3 months earlier. The Zilithian delegation looked tired and worried. The Vorlak ambassador had lost his usual confident manner. Even the normally emotionless Andromedans seemed agitated. "We need to make contact with the humans," said Ambassador Trill of the Micro Collective. Her tiny voice buzzed with urgency. "Our people are dying without human medical supplies. Our trade networks are collapsing." "How?" asked Kethvar. "We have tried every communication method we know. Human space is completely blocked to our signals." "Then we send ships," rumbled the Vorlak ambassador. "Break through their interference by force if necessary." "We already tried that," Thek 9 reported. "All ships that approach human space simply vanish. We have no idea if they are destroyed, captured, or transported somewhere else." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered their situation. For the first time in galactic history, a major spacefaring race had simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not conquered, but deliberately hidden behind technology that none of them understood. "There is another problem," said Dr. Shental, the Rigelian science advisor. She was a tall, blue-skinned being with large eyes that could see across multiple spectrums of light. "Our long-range sensors are detecting unusual activity beyond the galactic rim, energy signatures that match some of the readings from human space." The delegates looked at her with confusion. Beyond the galactic rim was empty space, stretching for millions of light-years before reaching the next galaxy. No known technology could cross such distances. "What kind of activity?" Kethvar asked. "Construction signatures, massive ones, and ship movements. It appears that something is building installations in the void between galaxies. The energy patterns are similar to what we detect from human space, but much larger." The silence that followed was heavy with implications that none of them wanted to consider. "It is not possible," whispered the Antarian delegate. "No race has the technology to work in intergalactic space." "The humans did not have that technology 3 months ago," agreed Thek 9. "But clearly, a great deal has changed since they left us." Kethvar stood up slowly, his silver skin showing the stress patterns that Zilithians displayed when deeply worried. "Send messages to all council races," he said. "Emergency session tomorrow. We need to decide what to do about the human situation." "What if they do not want to talk to us?" asked the micro-collective delegate. Kethvar looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. For the first time, they all looked like what they really were, children who had just realized they were alone in the dark. "Then we had better hope that whatever they are planning does not include revenge," he said quietly. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, none of them noticed the small device hidden in the corner where the human delegation used to sit. It had been there for 3 months, recording everything they said and transmitting the data to somewhere beyond the galactic rim, where the emergency council session had been going for 6 hours and nobody had any answers. Delegates from 46 different races sat around the blue stone table, arguing about what to do with the human problem. Some wanted to send military forces to break through the interference around human space. Others suggested offering trade agreements to bring the humans back. A few even proposed formally apologizing for their treatment of humanity. None of them expected the communication signal that came from outside the galaxy. The main display screen flickered to life, showing a transmission marker that made every delegate in the chamber freeze with terror. The signal was coming from the galactic edge, broadcast on emergency frequencies that were only used for major disasters. But this was not a distress call from some lost exploration ship. The signal carrier displayed the symbol of the Vorthan Empire. Prime Minister Kethvar felt his silver skin turn pale as the image resolved on the screen. The being that appeared was tall and humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin was dark, red, almost black with patterns of bright yellow running across its face like living tattoos. Its eyes were completely white, with no visible pupils, and when it smiled, its teeth were sharp and metallic. "Greetings, children of the inner galaxy," the Vorthan commander said. Its voice was smooth and pleasant, which somehow made it more frightening. "I am war leader Jacques Tell of the Vorthan Empire. We have been watching your little collection of worlds for many cycles, waiting for the right time to bring you into our domain." The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Several delegates started speaking at once, their translation devices creating a chaos of overlapping languages. The Vorlak ambassador was making deep rumbling sounds that meant extreme distress in his species. The micro-collective delegate was buzzing so fast that her words were unintelligible. "Silence!" Jacques Tell's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The screen flickered, and somehow the volume increased without anyone touching the controls. "You will listen, and you will understand your situation." The chamber fell quiet except for the soft humming of the life support systems. "The Vorthan Empire has existed for 50,000 of your years," Jacques Tell continued. "We have conquered 17 galaxies and absorbed over 10,000 species into our domain. Your little collection of worlds is nothing special except for one thing." The image on the screen changed, showing star charts that displayed the positions of all the major council races. Red markers began appearing on various systems, showing planned invasion routes and target priorities. "You have been protected by the human species," Jacques Tell said with amusement in his voice. "For the past several cycles, our advanced scouts have reported that these humans have been unusually effective at detecting our presence and disrupting our preparation activities. They have been inconvenient." Kethvar felt something cold growing in his stomach. The humans had been warning about Vorthan activity for years. Every report, every piece of evidence, every desperate plea for the council to take the threat seriously. It had all been real. "However," Jacques Tell continued, "our intelligence networks have informed us that the humans have recently severed their alliance with your council. This is fortunate for us." The star chart changed again, showing massive fleet movements at the galactic edge. Thousands of red dots were moving toward council space from multiple directions. "The Vorthan Empire will begin the conquest of your galaxy in 7 of your standard days. Resistance is not recommended. Species that surrender immediately will be incorporated into our domain as worker castes." Species that resist will be eliminated. Dr. Veltar of the Vorlak Research Station was frantically analyzing the energy readings from the transmission. What she found made her root systems curl with fear. The signal was being broadcast from multiple points around the entire galactic rim. That meant the Vorthan Empire had forces positioned all around their galaxy, completely surrounding them. "Your technology is primitive compared to ours," Jacques said, as if reading her thoughts. "Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships are slower than our fighters. Your best military leaders are children compared to our war leaders, who have conquered entire galactic clusters." The image switched to show Vorthan ships in action against unknown enemies. The vessels were sleek and deadly-looking, with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their weapons fired beams of energy that cut through enemy ships like paper. When they moved, space itself seemed to bend around them. "We estimate that total conquest will require approximately 60 of your standard days," Jacques said with casual confidence. "Longer if you choose to resist, shorter if you are wise enough to surrender." Commander Thek-9 was running calculations in her artificial mind. The Andromedan Collective had the most advanced military technology among the Council races, but even their best weapons seemed pathetic compared to what she was seeing on the screen. The energy output of a single Vorthan ship appeared to equal that of an entire Andromedan battle fleet. "You have 7 days to consider your options," Jacques said. "Contact your human friends if you wish." "Oh, wait. They are no longer speaking to you, are they? How unfortunate." The transmission ended, with a sound like breaking glass, leaving the council chamber in complete silence. For a long moment, nobody moved. 46 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat staring at a blank screen, trying to process what they had just learned. Finally, the Antarian delegate spoke in a whisper. "The humans knew. They tried to warn us." "For years," added the Regelian science advisor. "Every report we dismissed. Every piece of evidence we ignored." Kethvar stood up slowly, his legs feeling weak. "How many times did Ambassador Vasquez bring us Vorthan evidence?" 47 formal presentations. Theki-9 reported immediately. 233 informal warnings. 68 requests for joint military preparation, all rejected by council vote. The weight of their mistakes settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. They had not just dismissed human warnings, they had actively prevented humanity from preparing defenses against this threat. "We need to contact the humans immediately," said the micro-collective delegate. "Apologize. Beg for their help if necessary." "How?" rumbled the Vorlak ambassador. "We cannot even locate them. Human space is completely hidden from our sensors." "Then, we break through," Kethvar said desperately. "Send everything we have. Military fleets, diplomatic ships, anything that can reach human territory. Our fleets are already spread thin dealing with the conflicts that started when human peacekeepers left," Thek-9 pointed out. "And every ship we have sent toward human space has disappeared." Dr. Veltar was studying her sensor data with growing confusion and terror. "There is something else," she said quietly. "The energy readings from human space have changed since the Vorthan transmission began." Every head in the chamber turned toward her. "Changed how?" Kethvar asked. "The power output has increased by a factor of 10 in the last hour." "Whatever. The humans are building. They are working much faster now, and—" She paused, checking her readings again. "The interference field around human space is expanding. It now covers twice as much area as it did this morning." "What does that mean?" asked the Antarian delegate. Dr. Veltar looked up from her instruments, with eyes wide with fear and wonder. "It means the humans know about the Vorthan transmission, and they are preparing for something." The chamber fell silent again as everyone considered the implications. Somewhere beyond their ability to see or contact, humanity was working with technology that none of them understood. The same humans they had dismissed as emotional children were apparently preparing to face an enemy that could destroy entire galaxies. Should we try to help them? Asked the micro-collective delegate hesitantly. Kethvar almost laughed, but it came out as a sound of despair instead. Help them! We cannot even protect ourselves. Our combined fleets would last maybe 5 minutes against the Vorthan Empire. Then what do we do? Asked the Vorlak ambassador. Nobody had an answer. The races that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, who had seen themselves as the pinnacle of civilization and wisdom, were completely helpless. They had 7 days before the most powerful empire in known space began their conquest, and their only hope lay with a species they had spent years insulting and dismissing. As the delegates sat in stunned silence, none of them noticed that the hidden device in the corner of the chamber had stopped transmitting. Somewhere beyond the galactic rim, humanity had received all the information they needed. The real war was about to begin, and the Galactic Council was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when someone threatened their galaxy, even if that galaxy had rejected them, even if the people they were about to save had never deserved their protection, because that was what humans did. They protected people even when those people were too foolish to protect themselves. The silence in the council chamber was broken by a soft sound that none of them recognized. It took several minutes to realize that it was the sound of space, itself beginning to change, as forces beyond their understanding prepared for a battle that would decide the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The Vorthan invasion began exactly 7 days after their ultimatum, just as war leader Joktel had promised. It started at the Outer Rim worlds, where small colonies and research stations simply vanished from all communication networks. No distress calls, no battle reports, no survivors. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. Prime Minister Kethvar stood in the Zilithian Military Command Center, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. Red markers were appearing across the galaxy as Vorthan forces swept inward like a plague. Every few minutes, another system would go dark. "Status report," he demanded, though he dreaded the answer. General Vothran, the head of Zilithian Space Forces, looked up from his console with defeat already showing in his posture. "We have lost contact with 12 Outer Rim systems in the past 6 hours. Our fastest scouts report that Vorthan fleets are advancing on multiple fronts simultaneously. What about our defenses? Our combined fleet?" The general's silver skin turned almost white with stress. "Prime Minister, our combined forces engaged a single Vorthan battle group at the Kepler-7 system 4 hours ago. The entire fleet was destroyed in 18 minutes. Kethvar felt his legs almost give out. The Kepler-7 defense force had included ships from 6 different council races, including 3 Andromedan dreadnoughts and a Vorlak fortress ship. It was one of the most powerful military formations in the galaxy. "Survivors?" he asked quietly. "None, sir. The Vorthan weapons appear to disintegrate matter at the molecular level. We found no debris, no escape pods, no trace that our ships ever existed." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out in every Council species military headquarters. The Andromedans had lost their primary battle fleet in the first engagement. The Vorlak had watched their mighty tree ships burn like paper. The micro-collective's swarm tactics, which had worked against every previous enemy, were useless against weapons that could destroy 100 ships with a single shot. Commander Thek-9 was reviewing battle data in her sterile Andromedan command chamber when the desperate order came through. The Council was authorizing Emergency Protocol 7, the use of planet-killer weapons against the Vorthan invasion force. She paused in her analysis. Protocol 7 had never been used in the entire history of the Galactic Council. It was reserved for threats that could destroy all life in the galaxy, The weapons themselves were so powerful that using them carried the risk of making entire star systems uninhabitable for thousands of years, but they were out of options. The Andromedan Collective deployed their most advanced planet killer, a weapon that could crack a world in half and had enough power to destroy a small moon. They targeted the Vorthon staging area in the Sigma Draconis system, where long-range sensors detected thousands of enemy ships gathering for the next phase of the invasion. The weapon fired. A beam of pure energy, concentrated enough to ignite. A star struck the enemy fleet directly. It did nothing. The Vorthon ships sat in space, completely undamaged, as if they had been hit by a gentle breeze instead of a weapon capable of destroying worlds. Worse, they appeared to absorb the energy from the attack, their hull patterns glowing brighter as they converted the planet killer's power into fuel for their own systems. Thek 9 stared at the sensor readings with something approaching despair. If planet killer weapons could not even scratch Vorthon armor, then nothing in the Council's arsenal would work. The desperate measures grew more extreme as the invasion continued. The Zilithians attempted to break through the interference field around human space using a coordinated bombardment from their entire remaining fleet. Every ship they had left fired simultaneously at the barrier that surrounded human territory. The interference field absorbed their attacks without even flickering. Dr. Veltar was monitoring the assault from her research station when she detected something that made her root systems curl with terror. The energy readings from human space were not just growing stronger, they were changing in fundamental ways that violated everything she understood about physics. "The barrier is not just blocking our attacks," she reported to the Emergency Council session. "It is converting the energy from our weapons into something else, something I cannot identify." "What do you mean?" Kethvar asked desperately. "The energy signatures coming from human space are now showing patterns that should not exist. Power levels that exceed stellar output, but contained in structures smaller than a moon. Technologies that appear to manipulate space-time itself. The implications were terrifying. Whatever the humans were doing behind their barrier, they were working with science that was beyond anything the Council races had ever imagined. In desperation, some Council members authorized even more extreme measures. The Rigelians attempted to capture human civilians from isolated colonies outside the interference field, hoping to use them as bargaining chips or sources of information. The raids failed completely. Every human civilian they approached vanished, in flashes of light before they could be captured, as if they were being teleported away by some invisible force. The Antarian League tried a different approach. They broadcast surrender messages toward human space, offering to submit to human authority in exchange for protection from the Vorthon Empire. The messages disappeared into the interference field without any response. Most desperate of all, a joint task force of Council races attempted to contact the Vorthon Empire directly, hoping to negotiate terms for surrender. War leader Joktel appeared on their communication screen with amusement glowing in his white eyes. "You wish to surrender?" he asked with mock surprise. "How refreshing. Most species fight uselessly until we are forced to exterminate them." "We accept your terms," said the combined delegation. "Our worlds will submit to Vorthon rule in exchange for the preservation of our populations." Joktel laughed, a sound like breaking metal. "Oh, but your situation has changed since our first communication. You see, we have detected some very interesting energy signatures from the region you call human space. Our scientists are most curious about the technology your former allies appear to be developing." The Council delegates felt their last hope crumble. "The humans are no longer our allies," Kethvar said desperately. "We have no contact with them. We cannot provide access to their technology." "We know," Joktel said with satisfaction, "which is why your surrender is no longer acceptable. You are now useless to us, and useless species are eliminated rather than enslaved. The conquest will continue until every world in your galaxy belongs to the Vorthon Empire." The transmission cut off, leaving the Council races with the knowledge that they had lost their last chance for survival. As the Vorthon forces swept closer to the galactic core, refugees from the outer worlds brought increasingly desperate reports. Entire populations were being systematically exterminated. Worlds that resisted were turned into lifeless rocks. Even worlds that surrendered were stripped of all resources before their populations were killed. The proud Zalithian Trade Federation, which had controlled galactic commerce for 3,000 years, watched helplessly as their core worlds fell one by one. The Vorlak Research Institute, keeper of 10 millennia of scientific knowledge, saw their ancient libraries burn to ash. The Andromedan Collective, the galaxy's peacekeepers for centuries, could not even protect themselves. In the council chamber, the surviving delegates met for what they all knew would be the last time. Vorthan forces were only days away from reaching the galactic core. Soon, even this sanctuary would be destroyed. "Is there any word from human space?" asked the micro-collective delegate, though she already knew the answer. Dr. Veltar checked her instruments one final time. "The interference field is stronger than ever, but—" She paused, staring at readings that seemed impossible. "There is something else. The energy patterns have stabilized into something I have never seen before. It is as if they have created a pocket of altered space-time around their entire territory." "What does that mean?" Kethvar asked wearily. "I do not know," Dr. Veltar admitted. "But the power levels are now beyond anything I can measure. If these readings are accurate, the humans have access to more energy than our entire galaxy produces." As if responding to her words, every sensor array in the chamber suddenly came alive with alerts. Something was happening at the edge of human space. The interference field was fluctuating in patterns that suggested massive movement underneath. For the first time in months, the delegates felt something that might have been hope. "Are they finally coming out?" whispered the Antarian delegate. Dr. Veltar studied her instruments with growing excitement and terror. "Something is coming. Multiple massive signatures moving faster than anything should be able to travel. They are heading—" She stopped, checking her readings again to make sure she was not making a mistake. "They are heading directly toward the Vorthon invasion fleet. In the depths of space, where the Vorthon Empire had gathered its forces for the final assault on the galactic core, war leader Jacques Tell was reviewing conquest plans when his sensors detected something impossible. Space itself was tearing open, and something that defied all known laws of physics was emerging from the tiers. Something that carried human energy signatures but was far beyond. The first sign that everything was about to change came when space itself began to scream. War leader Jacques Tell was standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, when reality started to tear apart around his invasion fleet. At first, it looked like small cracks in the darkness between stars. Then the cracks began to grow, spreading like breaks in glass, revealing something behind the normal fabric of space that hurt to look at directly. "Report!" Jacques Tell commanded, his white eyes narrowing as he tried to understand what he was seeing. "Known. Spatial anomalies detected throughout the fleet formation," his science officer reported, fear creeping into his voice despite Vorthon military training. "Energy readings are impossible, war leader. The instruments cannot measure what is happening." Through the cracks in space, light began to shine. But it was not the light of any star or energy weapon that Jacques Tell had ever seen. This light seemed alive, pulsing with patterns that suggested intelligence behind it, and as the cracks widened, shapes began to emerge. Ships. But calling them ships was like calling a storm a gentle breeze. The vessels that emerged from the tiers in space were unlike anything in Jacques Tell's experience of conquering 17 galaxies. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, with hulls that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Some were sleek and curved like living creatures, others were geometric and angular like mathematical equations given physical form. All of them radiated power that made the Vorthon flagship's weapons seem like toys. But what made Jactel's black blood run cold was the energy signatures his sensors detected. Buried deep within the impossible readings was something familiar. Something he had learned to recognize during the long years of preparing for this invasion: human energy patterns, but amplified beyond all reason. "Impossible," he whispered. "They are only primitives, emotional children with basic technology." The largest of the new ships began to move toward his fleet. As it approached, Jactel could see that its hull was not solid metal or crystal, but something that shifted and flowed like liquid light. Patterns moved across its surface in ways that suggested the ship itself was alive. A communications signal reached the Eternal Conquest. When it connected, Jactel found himself looking at a face he recognized from intelligence reports, but transformed in ways that defied understanding. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before him, but she was no longer the same human who had walked out of the council chamber a year ago. Her skin held a subtle luminescence, as if lit from within by some internal energy source. Her eyes, once brown, now held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated through subspace itself. "War leader Jactel of the Vorthon Empire," Elena said, her words somehow reaching every ship in his fleet simultaneously. "You have made a mistake." Jactel struggled to maintain his composure. The Vorthon Empire had conquered galaxies. They had destroyed species that had existed for millions of years. He would not be intimidated by enhanced primitives. "You are too late, human," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "Your former allies are already defeated. Their worlds burn behind us. Soon your galaxy will belong to the Vorthon Empire." Elena's expression did not change, but something in her transformed eyes suggested amusement. "You misunderstand the situation, war leader. We are not here to protect our former allies. We are here to protect our galaxy." "Your galaxy?" Jactel laughed, the sound harsh and metallic. "You were cast out by your own council. You have no authority here." "Authority is not given," Elena said quietly. "It is taken. And we have taken responsibility for every living being in this galaxy, whether they deserve it or not." Around the Eternal Conquest, more tiers in space were opening. Hundreds, then thousands of the impossible ships were emerging, surrounding. The Vorthon invasion fleet in a formation that seemed to extend through dimensions that Jactel could not perceive. But Elena was not finished speaking. "You spoke of conquering 17 galaxies," she continued. "You see yourselves as the apex predators of the universe, but you have never encountered a species like humanity." The space around Elena seemed to shift, and suddenly Jactel could see beyond her ship to something that made his mind struggle to process what he was observing. Behind the human fleet, structures were emerging from the tiers in space. Not ships, but installations that dwarfed entire star systems. Constructs of impossible size and complexity that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names. "While you were playing conquest games with primitive species," Elena said, "we were learning from our teachers." The view expanded again, and Jactel saw them. Beings of pure energy and light, ancient beyond measure, moving between the human ships like guardians. Their forms were constantly shifting, sometimes appearing as geometric patterns, sometimes as creatures that belonged in myths rather than reality. "The Eternal Ones," Elena explained, noting his recognition. "The first species to evolve consciousness in this universe. They have been waiting for 12 billion years for a race worthy of their knowledge, a race that could grow beyond the need for conquest and domination." Jactel felt something he had not experienced in his 1,000 years of existence: fear. "They found us when we left the Council's limiting influence," Elena continued. They taught us technologies that make your empire's weapons look like sharpened sticks. They showed us how to manipulate space and time itself. But most importantly, they taught us what it means to truly protect life. One of the human ships moved closer to the Eternal Conquest. It was smaller than Jactel's flagship, but as it approached, his instruments detected energy levels that exceeded the combined output of his entire invasion fleet. "You have a choice, war leader," Elena said. "Your empire ends here. Your ships will be disabled and your crews return to your home galaxy with a simple message. This galaxy is under human protection. Any further incursion will result in consequences you cannot imagine." Jactel's pride as a conqueror finally overcame his growing fear. "The Vorthan Empire does not retreat. We do not surrender. All weapons, target the human ships, fire everything." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Vortan ship in the massive invasion fleet opened fire simultaneously. Planet-killer weapons, reality-warping torpedoes, space-folding disruptors. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize entire star systems. None of it reached the human ships. The weapons simply stopped existing the moment they were fired. Not blocked, not deflected. They ceased to be, as if they had never been created in the first place. "You chose poorly," Elena said with something that might have been sadness in her transformed voice. What happened next would be remembered by the few surviving Vorthan witnesses as the day their empire learned that there were forces in the universe beyond their understanding. The human ships did not return fire in any conventional sense. Instead, they simply began to exist more intensely than the space around them. Reality bent and twisted to accommodate their presence. And the Vorthan fleet found itself trapped in pockets of altered physics where their weapons would not function and their ships could not move. One by one, Vorthan vessels were enveloped in fields of crystalline energy that rendered them completely powerless. Crews found themselves unable to operate any systems, unable to even move from their stations. They could only watch as their mighty warships were reduced to floating museums of their former power. The process took less than an hour. 15,000 Vorthan ships, the largest invasion force in their empire's history, neutralized without a single human weapon being fired. Jactel found himself alone on his bridge, his crew frozen in fields of energy that held them as gently as they held them completely. Elena's image appeared before him one final time. "Your crews will be returned to your home galaxy unharmed," she said. "Your ships will be recycled into materials for rebuilding the worlds you destroyed. And you, war leader, will carry a message to your empire." She leaned forward, and for a moment, Jactel saw something in her eyes that was more terrifying than any weapon. "Humanity has evolved beyond your ability to comprehend. We are no longer the emotional primitives you dismissed. We are the guardians of this galaxy, and we have allies that span multiple dimensions of reality. If your empire ever again considers expansion into our space, we will not simply disable your fleets." The image shifted, showing Jactel a view of something that existed beyond the normal universe. Structures of impossible scale, beings of pure energy, and technologies that could reshape reality itself. "We will come to your home galaxy and remake your entire civilization according to our principles of protection and peace. Your choice is simple. Learn to coexist with your neighbors or be transformed into a species that can." The transmission ended, and Jactel found himself alone with the knowledge that the Vorthan Empire's age of conquest was over forever. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, 46 alien delegates sat in stunned silence as they watched the impossible battle on their screens. The humans had not just defeated the Vorthan invasion, they had made it irrelevant with technology that seemed more like magic than science. Dr. Veltar was the first to speak, her voice filled with awe and terror. "They have become something beyond our understanding,"